Welcome, everyone. We'll wait a couple minutes for our official start time to let everyone in. Yeah.
Okay.
This class is on developing intuition. And I'll tell you a quick intuition story that happened to me this week, kind of a random one, but I found it interesting. I was waiting for a check from my mortgage company so I could start rebuilding my house. And I hadn't received the check for 5 straight months, right? Emailed them, called them, sat on hold every single day for hours, no check. And all of a sudden, I got this intuitive hit to go ahead and put the money down, tens and tens of thousands of dollars to get started. That I was like, okay, I guess here we go. And I made the payment with my credit card. And like a day or two later, the actual charge hit my account. An hour later, the check from the mortgage company arrived. And it was a clean break. The money came out and then the new money came in. And it worked out where it didn't overdraw my account. There wasn't any problems, whatever. And anyone else using their logical mind would have thought you're totally nuts for
Uy.
just sending $25,000, without knowing if you're ever going to get this check that's been not heard from for months. But I followed that intuition and it opened up the energy for there to be flow there. And I looked at the package and they had overnighted it too. So once I released that myself and let go of that, stopped worrying about it, that's when they must have sent it, was that day because it was overnighted. So just kind of a cool version, a cool story about intuition, which of course I wouldn't make that big of a decision if I hadn't been practicing my intuition and using it for little decisions over and over again for many years. And so now when those moments come, I'm like, oh, okay, I know to listen. It's a clear message there. Yeah, I know the difference between that and just another thought, right? So that's what we're kind of going for. That's what we're gonna start to learn to do, talk about today. Yeah. Anyone else have a fun intuition story? I know there's a lot of people who have been doing this work for a while in here. I don't know if anyone has any other fun stories they want to share.
I have one similar like what you have. I'm I'm going tomorrow to Miami, so have a deposit was coming up in the next week because uh Monday uh for Monday was the deposit, and I said, well, it'd be cool if we get it before I leave. So, but anyway, whatever it happened, but I have the feeling they're gonna deposit the deposit yesterday because a holiday coming up, so they did it before the holiday. And instead to do it after the holiday. I said, cool. It's
Very
like,
nice. Yeah, that's great.
so it's funny how that happened because you start thinking about and then boom, happen. It's like
Hmm.
you have the feeling and but you're not certainly clearly it's gonna happen or not. But your inside is give you like a 98 or 99% that this gonna happen. You know what I mean? If,
Hmm.
if you think it could be that, but your inside heart is telling you, "Mind, no, no, it's gonna do it. It's gonna happen."
Yeah, yeah. That's when you practice listening to that intuitive message instead of the mind. It's like, no, no, I feel this. It's coming in. Don't have to listen to that doubt or anything else. It's here. All
Yeah.
right. Got a few more people.
I have another story if you want to share.
Yeah, let's hear one more story.
Um, one of these past weekends, I was out in a forest that is really familiar to me. I feel very well acquainted with, and chose to enter it and walk around during the day and do a little like nature walk hike, and said hello to the forest. And the forest said, "Turn back and go back." Number of times. And this is one that's usually very like friendly towards me. And I chose to ignore it. And what developed was a really intense thunderstorm with walnut sized hail that I chose
Mm.
to ignore these warning signs and was hailed on, which was a really cool experience, actually, but kind of dangerous.
Oh,
I
yes.
ignored the intuition.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, it reminds me of I had the same thing happen when I was hiking in the sand dunes in Colorado, and I tell my friend, I'm like, it's gonna hail and it's gonna lightning. Something's coming. And she goes, no, 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 we got to get to the top. I've never been here. Let's just keep going. And I'm like, it's not gonna end well. And we kept pushing, and same thing, got hit by hail and actually got struck by lightning. It hit the ground and came up through my body. But it was a massive storm. The whole sky turned green, everything. And it's just kind of an interesting point because maybe our intuition is sort of based upon being something that helps us to survive, at a very basic level. It helps us to receive information from our environment and from our world to help us kind of make choices and move forward. And it's interesting because you'll be intuitively connected to whatever you're most interested in. Whatever is registering to you as like interesting or something that is of importance to your survival. And so some people, they're really connected to their phone, where if somebody texts them, they may have not touched their phone for hours, but they're like, this person texted me, they have that intuitive connection to it because it's something they're focusing on and putting energy into all day. It's kind of connected to them. Whereas other people, they might be really connected to like their partner, or their twin, a sibling, and they can kind of tell what's going on with that person regardless of the distance of how far away they are. Whereas somebody else, maybe they've had problems in like workplace relationships. That's kind of the thing that's perceived as the danger. And so they're hyper aware of if their boss is mad at them or thinking they're doing a bad job or something like that, right? We're kind of receiving feedback from all these different directions all the time. But for most people, you're not really aware of what's your energy, what's your thoughts, what's kind of your information versus what's random information from the environment. And so it just all kind of collects in there. And then you start thinking differently, feeling differently. You start kind of engaging with your environment from maybe a more anxious place or a more depressed place or just a more fatigued place. And then once you start to use your intuition, it's kind of a way to receive the messages from the body and the messages from the energy around you, the energetic environment that's there. And when you can receive those messages, then you don't hold on to them. They don't weigh on you. It's not something that you're kind of stuck with. I oftentimes noticed when I was younger that if I would go to school, and be around all these other people, I would feel really crazy. My mind would be all over the place. I would feel really emotional. And so I would be like, oh, well, if I go out in the woods or hike or whatever, now I'm totally fine. It was like, oh, if I'm at school, I'm this depressed, psychotic person. But if I'm by myself, I'm totally fine. There was enough distance that that energy kind of cleared out of there. And a lot of sensitive souls, they need that. They need that connection to nature. They need to be able to get away. But we live in a world where that's not always possible. We're around a lot of people. And so it's a matter of knowing what signals are really your signals, your messages to follow versus random static from everybody else and from the world. And when you can hear your own inner voice, maybe that's what we're calling intuition, then you have a lot more clarity moving forward on your path. Those things don't overwhelm you and stress you out. I started learning these intuitive tools when I was a teenager, and I literally had opted out from going to high school because it was too energetically overwhelming for me. I couldn't do it. And then I went away and learned these tools, and I was able to come back and actually finish school that year. I had basically missed the first 3 years of school, and then being able to run energy, have my own energetic space, like know what's me, what's my answer. I did all of high school in 1 year, just finished it. And so that's, one of the beauties of intuition. There's kind of a few aspects of intuition I want to talk about, and then we'll open it up for some questions, and then we'll do a group healing, just so you know the flow of this. I'll try not to be too long-winded. But one of the things is just what is intuition? Everybody has somewhat of a different definition of that or a different sense of what intuition is. And it's all kind of pointing to one thing, right? Like for one person, intuition might be a gut feeling. For another person, intuition might be this sense of just knowingness. They kind of know something by abnormal means. They might not know how they know it or why they know it. They just kind of know it, you know? Whereas other people, their intuition, it might be kind of like experienced through the world. They might experience it through symbols, through dreams, through synchronicities that are happening there. But all in all, I would say intuition is spirit's communication that's coming in. It's that message that's coming in, right? You could be intuitive and receive a message from a guide. You could be intuitive and receive a message from somebody on the other side. Your body has a certain level of wisdom and information to it, and you could be intuitively picking up on that body's message. So it's kind of a way of receiving information. It's a personal guidance system that's within you, because the other guidance system that you have is the conditioning of your physical body, right? Your body's programmed to survive. It's programmed to be in environments that'll aid your survival, be with people that'll aid your survival, right? We have this very biological sort of programming within us, but we live in a very biologically non-aligned society, right? You know, we're not living the symbiotic relationship and connection to nature anymore. There's all these other things that are kind of overstimulating our system. And so our ancient, you know, body with its nervous system and its lizard brain and all these different things, it's picking up on all sorts of things from the world and trying to decide if it's going to aid in your survival or take away from your survival. And it doesn't necessarily have the proper way to intake that information to make a logical decision, right? It's just kind of imprints, because how does your body get those messages? Your body itself isn't looking at your environment and taking everything into consideration. Your body's going off of what you're imagining in your mind, in your head, right? So if you're sitting in a room and you're drinking a soda and you get some text message that, you know, something bad happened, and in your mind, you're registering that as, oh no, this is a really horrible thing. This is a really bad thing. It's shocking, surprising. I don't know how to deal with it. Your body's just registering danger, danger, and oh, here's soda, soda. And all of a sudden, every time you drink that soda, you might have a reaction to it. You might feel really bloated. You might get a, you know, sugar rush and then crash. You know, you might have some sort of response because that's what's registered there. And your body's forever going to see that as something that's dangerous to you until you release that energy, release that sort of body level PTSD, right? And there are ways to do that. But the other option is, rather than just operating off of your body's wisdom or your body's guidance system, you have your intuitive guidance system. You have that ability to receive those messages from spirit, you could say, about the world around you. And so if somebody is acting in a way that's maybe threatening or scary to you, like say there's a guy that's really big and strong, has a bunch of tattoos and a beard, and maybe you've been conditioned that that's a scary person, that there's danger. And so your body has a reaction, but maybe your intuition sees, oh, that's actually the most loving person in the room. That's a really sweet person. Sometimes you'll see kids do that, where they run up to somebody that you'd be like, oh no, that's the danger person. And the kid's like giving them a big hug and they end up being a total sweetie and like playing with the kid. That kid's still tapped into their intuition. You know, they're seeing who that person is as a soul a little bit more there, right? And so your intuition is something you use all the time. You use it in your day-to-day life, whether you're aware of yourself using it or not. The majority of people, they're so in their head that they're not really aware of that message. They're not super aware of what their intuition is guiding them towards. They're using their mind and they're just kind of assessing the information and making a pro and cons list in their head. Does this aid in my survival or not? You know, is this going to make me happier or less happier? That sort of a thing. But if you're just basing those decisions off of your mental noise, your anxiety, and your body's response to it, it's going to be a little bit misguided. It's not going to take into account your own personal path, your own personal purpose, your own personal karma, right? It's going to take into account more the conditioning of the society, the conditioning of your parents, the conditioning of your past experiences. That's what it's using as data to make an informed decision, which it might work. It might even work to keep you alive and moving forward in a way that's socially acceptable. But is that going to guide you to your highest truth? Is that going to guide you most elegantly to your highest calling here on earth and what's really for you and your soul's path? Or is it taking kind of a cookie cutter blueprint that society says this is the way to survive? This is what it looks like to be a good citizen, and following that versus following what's really truly unique for your path and for you, what really works for you, right? And so it just depends on what kind of life you want to have. Yeah. And it's not to say that using your intuition to make decisions and to guide you means that everything's easy street. Sometimes it's guiding you to something that's going to be a lesson for you to go through and experience. But when you're able to see it through intuition, one of the aspects of that is you see it through the lens of truth. And so where your ego or your mind might say, oh, I followed my intuition and this was kind of hard. You know, the ego would say, oh, that's hard, which means that it's bad, which means that I'm bad, I'm not doing a very good job. You know, it has all these stories around like who you're supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like. But when you're in your intuition and seeing it through the lens of truth, you go, oh, look at this beautiful learning opportunity. Look how much I was able to gain through going this route. Look at how this serves my personal purpose in life, and these other expectations that I had for life. Maybe they really aren't that important anyway. Maybe that's not actually what's best for me. And so you start to perceive everything through a different lens too. It starts to mean something different to you. And when you're perceiving through the lens of the ego, your life continues to separate and divide you. It continues to kind of collect a certain level of pain and suffering. Even if things are going seemingly pretty well for you, it's just, you notice somebody who's older in their life, they have more of that pent up stress and pain. You know, it's like a little kid can eat Pop-Tarts and Taco Bell every day and they feel totally fine because they don't have that energy built up in their system yet. But an adult that eats the same, you know, they're going to feel terrible, right? It's not going to sit with them very well. Just a random example. uh, but yeah, it's kind of a moment to moment choice is to, if you want to lean into your intuitive voice and hear that voice of truth, see through the lens of spirit, or see through the lens of ego. And learning how to make that choice and then practicing making that choice over and over again is how you get really good at it. And then you're able to follow it, to listen to it for bigger and bigger decisions. You're able to trust it more and more. Right? Yeah. And there's a lot of examples that I could give of that. I'm trying to decide which story I would even want to tell you in that regards. I'm notorious for choosing things that I know will not work out at a physical level for what other people would consider it working out. Um, but there's always something that I gain in it that I'm really appreciative of, something that really makes a big difference to me, really means a lot. Like I moved to another country and worked there for over a year to kind of develop this career that I knew I ultimately was going to leave, that I wasn't going to actually do. And to everybody else, it would be crazy to spend that kind of money, time, and hop countries to do that. But the experience that I had and what it set me up for afterwards was totally worth it to me. Right. Same with like relationships. I've used my intuition to see relationships weren't actually going to last and chose to partake in them anyway and learned so much from them, gained so much from it. And society's expectation would be that, oh, that's a failed relationship. Failed to who? Wasn't a failure to me. Not at all. Right. And even in my career, that's been the case. You know, I would leave one job and everybody would say, you're nuts. Why would you leave that job? It was a good gig. And at first, the next job would seem way worse. And I'd have a moment of panic where I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And then I'd continue following my intuition and the next step would open up and it'd go, ah, That's why we're here. That's why this makes sense, right? Like one job I moved basically from one part of the state to the other for it. And it seemed like a way worse job in every single way at first. It was a pay cut. The car I had to drive was way worse. The hours were way worse. The people weren't the same vibe that I liked. Everything was seemingly worse about it at first. But I was like, no, I'm supposed to be here. And then suddenly my intuition said, okay, it's time to jump. It's time to leave. Create a vision of what you want to move into and release that. And I created this very detailed vision of what I wanted to create and said, all right, I'm going to jump. And I quit that job on a moment's notice after having basically moved for it and done all this work to switch over to it and riled up a bunch of people's feelings. And then the next thing I know, the owner of that company says, hey, before you leave, I'm going to create a whole new position, and I think you'd be great for it. And he outlined what that position would be, and it was every single thing that I had visualized and asked for. Didn't even exist to my knowledge at the time, but I took the leap despite my mind thinking I was crazy, and it worked out. It worked out tremendously well, right? But that ability to do that, like I was saying earlier, was because I'd practiced it over and over again with little things in my life. Practice tapping into that intuitive voice, intuitive vision, and letting it guide you. Yeah. And then the last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll meditate, I promise we're almost there, is I like to ponder like how is intuition useful for one's spiritual path? Because some people, they're like, I just want to heal, I just want to meditate, I just want to kind of progress. I don't necessarily need the intuition or the answers, but ultimately, intuition is an innate gift that we all have. Nobody's born more psychic than another person. We're all born with that ability. Somebody's maybe developed it over their past lifetimes and they have life circumstances that help to kind of promote it and cultivate it a little bit more in them. But it's kind of like saying, somebody's not born with bigger muscles, or more muscles than another person. It's just they're in an environment where they're using them more, right? That's kind of how I see intuition. And so it's an innate part of the spiritual path in the sense that spirituality is a large part of it is going beyond your mind to inquire within. And your intuition is one of your greatest tools for using your awareness to inquire within. Whether that's the question of who am I, whether that's the question of what am I doing here, or whether that's the question of what do I want to eat for dinner, that intuition can be used as that tool for inquiry, for getting answers, for not having to rely on somebody else for your wisdom, to not be ball and chain to some sort of teacher, tradition, anything. It brings the power back to you, where you get to ask that question. And if you look at many of the spiritual people that reached enlightenment or had success, what did they do? They're like sitting under a tree, doing some inquiry, That's what they're doing. And you could say that it also helps you to know what's next for you on the spiritual path, because the spiritual path can feel very convoluted. It can feel very nuanced. And it's kind of like, oh, well, what do I actually do? What actually is my next step here? Am I really growing? Am I really, shifting and changing and being more of the spirit that I am? Or am I just going in circles in some weird fantasy? What's going on here? And so being able to use your own intuition, you're able to have more of a sense of what's going on within you, what direction you're going in, what's needed for you on your spiritual path. Because really, whatever's needed for your spiritual path is going to be what's right in front of you. But when you can access your intuition, you can actually receive that. You can actually understand what that message is. If something bad happens to you, your car's tire blows out or something, instead of just going, oh, that must mean I'm an idiot, you can tap into your intuition and see, oh, what does that really mean? Is that a message that I need to slow down? Is that a message of, this or that you get to receive that information in a different way that helps you to move forward. So I would say that it's pretty useful on the spiritual path, and that a lot of spiritual practices are using it, whether they speak to it in that way or not. It's one of those tools that they use, even just to move things from the unconscious mind to the conscious. It's a way to access that, to get that answer, that awareness, insight that's beyond just your regular thinking mind, you know? Um, let's go ahead and meditate. It looks like that would be good. We'll do a meditation and then we'll do the Q&A. So go ahead and just find like a seated position, maybe with your feet on the floor, kind of a little bit upright if you can for this meditation. And give yourself a nice deep breath in. And it's okay if you even want to smile to yourself. This isn't a serious thing. Intuition is actually way harder if you're being serious about it, especially if you're taking yourself seriously or your problems, the world, anything else. You want to be light and amused, kind of like a child as you do this. And just check in with yourself, where you're at right now. If you were a silent observer within your own body, within your own space, just notice what would be kind of moving through your system. If a lot of your focus is on a certain sensation, if it's on a specific thought pattern, sometimes with these sort of Zoom webinars, it's like, here's my biggest life problem and tell me how I'm going to solve it. But I went to 5 other webinars and they all sucked and didn't give me any answers. They just led me on. It was all build up, no breakthrough. Is this going to be the same? Well, it's up to you. And just move through any of those thoughts, any of those feelings, whatever's got your attention. Don't fight it. It's not a tug of war game to get your attention back. Just notice kind of where your energy's spread out to, what direction it's going in. Yeah. Maybe you're just having some awareness of your own intuition and intuitive moments that you've had. That's great. Maybe you're having some awareness of where you didn't listen to your intuition and got hit by a bus, metaphorically. Something happened. So I've had more than enough of those learning moments too. Yes. It's kind of like my son says. He's like, sometimes I get this voice in my head that tells me to do it this way or that way, or that the answer's this or that. And whenever I don't listen to it, I always get that problem wrong on my test, or it never works out. He was very much noticing that. Yeah. And he has this funny thing where he hears that inner voice so clearly and then gets nervous and does the opposite of it. So much to the point where I could tell him, hey, go right, and he'll immediately run left. Even if I'm pointing and standing in front of him and I'm like, go right here, he'll immediately run the other direction. And that's kind of how we're conditioned, right? We're so conditioned to follow that path of logic. And so we want to show ourselves how to listen to that other voice. And one of the first ways that you start to do that is you bring your energy, you bring your awareness to this place in the center of your head, this place behind your eyes and in between your ears. You could say you're bringing that energy to that 6th chakra, that energy center. And that's maybe the easiest chakra to tap into your intuition from. It's right by where the messages are coming in. And so just see your energy almost like a ball of light being right there in the center of your head. Whether you're doing this for your first time or your 10,000th time, this tool can go infinitely deep. How present can you be right there in the center of your head? How much light can you bring there? Into that center where your pineal gland is, that gland that helps you to tap into your intuition. And you can see an inner landscape. You can see a nature environment or a room around you, almost like you're a little you sitting right there in that captain's chair in the center of your head. And just see that scenery. It doesn't have to be a real scenery. It doesn't have to be your house. It can be anything that you can dream up and imagine. And make sure there's no other people in that center of head space. No other animals, nothing, just you. And if you get really present here and in this way, the first helpful thing that can happen is your mind starts to get a little bit quieter. You're not in the center of your thinking mind, you're in the center of you as a being, your spiritual center, as well as the center of your sixth chakra or somewhere nearby. And your mind is just a thing that runs information through based off of what's going on in your environment. It's a overlay of what's actually happening. Instead of having a direct and pure experience of your environment, the mental overlay is all the assumptions about it, all those past information, all of those little divisive energies that are kind of overlaying the actual experience. And so as you let that mind start to quiet just by being in non-resistance to it, letting any thoughts flow through, just moving like clouds, passing by, witnessing them, and being in the center, you start to immediately get more in touch with the true reality. You start to activate that third eye muscle a little bit. That space where intuition happens. And then go ahead and see a giant tree trunk connected to your hips. You could say it's also connecting to your first chakra, that cylinder that's at the base of your spine that goes from the front of your body to the back of your body, that energy center that kind of governs your physical survival, all those body level noises, information. And see that tree trunk going all the way to the center of the planet, making that long journey in a quick amount of time and just really connecting the center of the planet to your hips, to your first chakra. And you get kind of an airtight seal there. It's almost like a vacuum suction that takes place. And in doing so, you connect to the earth, you connect to your sort of deeper nature, and you quiet down some of that noise of that physical response system. It also helps more of your energy as a soul to be in your body. If you're kind of scattered and all over the place, it's harder to be connected to your intuition. This kind of helps you to incarnate, to bring your soul's energy in. Right? And I want you to intend for that grounding cord, that tree trunk, to help you release any energetic constipation in your third eye. Almost like it's just vacuuming that energy down from the center of the head space that you're sitting in. Don't follow the tree trunk down, still be in the center of your head. Yeah. And if there's any of your, a family member's energy in the center of your head, some work energy in there, partner energy, whatever, let that just release. Even if you don't really know what that's supposed to look like or feel like, just have that intention. Let yourself have an experience of releasing any third eye gunk. Kind of like when you wake up and you have sleep in your eyes, those eye boogies, let any third eye boogies just clear right out. In case you started getting serious, I got to throw some childish jokes in there. Yeah. And you might release a certain thought pattern, might be what drops out, or a certain sensation that kind of falls away. There's really kind of no limit to what you can actually just release and ground. It can be the ultimate healing tool as long as you're actually ready to let go of it, ready to be more the truth of who you are. You can let go of practically anything, can drop that right down. Yeah. And then one important step we can take with developing your intuition is to turn the mind down and shift from a place of doing, creating, into more of a place of receiving. Because you don't do intuition, you don't grab at answers, you receive them. You become aware of them, you let them come to you. And so I want you to first just imagine a balloon out in front of you. And I want you to let that balloon represent your mind. And see, is that balloon really blown up? Is there a lot of mental activity that's going on there? If you're feeling like you want to reach for your phone or the bag of chips, some of that distraction, your balloon might be pretty big. If you're able to kind of be here with this, experience it, enjoy it, your balloon might look a little bit smaller. And so just be aware of your balloon, where that's at. Yeah, without judgment. Might be bigger or smaller at other parts of the day. And then with your intention, kind of untie the base of that balloon and let it deflate. Let that mind quiet down. Let it release those thoughts, those activations in your mind. And if one sneaks back in and starts to blow that balloon up again, that's okay. You can be aware of it. There's a reason that your mind is going in that direction, thinking about that thing. You don't have to identify that reason why there's some energy going to it. It's thinking of it as important information, essentially. And so you can just note it. You can just be aware as you let that mind quiet down. And we shift into practice asking questions with your intuition. You can use your ability to visualize to get into your intuitive mind. That's one of the most effective ways to do that. If you just try to think of a question and think of an answer, you're getting back in your head. But if you make it visual, you make it creative, you can receive an answer without activating the mind. So the visual mind is the intuitive mind, right? Just like you're visualizing that grounding cord, that tree trunk, You're visualizing that scenery in the center of the head that you're in. So let's try it. Start small and just ask to see in your mind's eye, what's one color in your energy field? Colors represent energies. We all have them around us. What's one color that's around you right now? Can you receive that information? Good. And maybe that color makes you think of something. Maybe that color makes you think of a specific person. Maybe that color makes you think of a certain object or quality. And maybe that quality or person, it's reflecting some of the energy in your space. Like maybe I saw some yellow, and yellow reminds me of SpongeBob. And SpongeBob's always ready, always enthusiastic. Maybe there's a little bit of that enthusiasm that's in my space. Ah, okay. Small, maybe not that important, but it's a way of receiving information, right? And go ahead and ask a new question. Ask, what's one way in which you can practice self-love today? And get a visual answer, kind of like you're just watching a movie out in front of you. It might not be what you expect either. You know, the world might say, here's what you do for self-love. You take a bubble bath. That's it. You know, maybe you see something different. Maybe you see it's that you need to go on a nature walk. Maybe you see practicing self-love for you is indulging in that bag of chips in that movie without any guilt. You're just going to let yourself have it tonight. You know, see what it is for you. What's one way that you can practice self-love? Yeah. It's nice to start by asking questions that really have no risk to them, right? There's no sort of downside of what that answer is. But you can use your intuition to ask deeper questions too. You could ask the question, what is the main lesson that's playing out in my life right now? What's the main thing that life is trying to teach me? I popped on a Instagram live with a friend who does live readings just to support him, and he decided to pick me to do a little reading on. And all he said was, "You're working on boundaries right now." And I laughed because I was like, "Ah, so simple and so true." Right? It's kind of just like pulling a tarot card. Just let there be an image, some sort of symbols, something there. Some people are more visual and some people are more in their feelings. Let yourself perceive that or receive that information however it comes in. There's not a right way. The visual way keeps you in your intuitive mind, but if you receive it differently, that's okay. If you think of a song and those song lyrics have to do with what your lesson is right now, great. Whenever I meet someone new in a like romantic setting, I'll hear a song play in my head, and that song will tell me the outcome of the relationship every time. I'm like, oh boy, that's an interesting one. I know how this is going. Uh, and sometimes the song changes later on because things can shift and change. But my point is just receive it however it comes in. You might think it's just random or you making it up, but no, that's how your intuition uses what it has to give you information. It's using what's already in your mind to help you to receive that answer. What are you learning right now? Right? And if you're learning patience, you're going to treat your day and the obstacles in front of you much differently than if you're learning persistence. It's something that you're supposed to keep fighting the good fight and moving forward versus something you're supposed to be patient with, kind of let it sit. Can make all the difference in the world to receive that answer. So just give it a try, whether it's your first time trying it or your 100th time, just see what shows up. Again, lightheartedly. It's the easiest way for that to come in, and do it receiving. You're not trying, you're not an effort, you're not trying to make something happen. That's all body level stuff. Only the body does that. The spirit, the intuitive soul, receives playfully that information. Right? So just let it come to you. For some people, it's kind of a dreamlike experience. And just practice it one more time with whatever you want. If you were going to come and get a reading from me, what's the question you would ask? What's one thing you want to know? And just create that question in your mind and then practice letting that go, just like sending out that question. And just intend to receive an answer visually, experientially, however it comes in. Even if it doesn't make sense right now, that's okay. We're just practicing receiving information. Even people that practice prayer, it's usually an outward energy exchange, not something where they stop to receive. Your whole universe is mirroring your own energy. It's mirroring what's going on with you. And so there's actually a constant flow of feedback. And if you get out of trying to control everything and make something happen the way you want it to, and you start to receive the feedback of the world, it all makes sense. It can be very intuitive. I once got an astrology reading, which is something I very rarely do a full reading on, and all the advice that they gave was stuff that I was already doing. Even the reading for my son, it was very specific. It was like he should probably do mountain biking and horseback riding. And I had already intuitively signed him up for both of those activities and was doing them. Because I've practiced receiving that information, that feedback from the world to guide me. So it was all aligned. I didn't have to make a big adjustment. Whereas my friend that I bought a reading for, he got his reading and he goes, oh, wow, this comes as a shock, comes as a surprise. I got to make some big changes here. Right? Yeah. And so just finish receiving that answer and realizing too, if it's not a full intellectually satisfying answer that you're like, yeah, I got it, just know that it's on its way. It will arrive through your life experience. It could arrive in a dream where you have the epiphany. It could arrive through a conversation. It could arrive through synchronicity, but it'll arrive because you've asked the question. And you always want to be mindful of how you ask the question too, because the universe will give you the answer to that same tone. If your question is, what am I doing wrong? The universe is going to show you what you're doing wrong. Whereas if your question is, how can I make this situation work for me? How can I make the best of this? That's what it's going to show you. So ask that question in the positive as much as you can. Yeah. And so, like I was saying, you can use intuition for self inquiry, one of those potent practices for enlightenment. We won't do that right now, though. That's a bit much. Just give yourself a nice deep breath in. And again, release any energy down your grounding cord. Maybe within your body is the energy of what's keeping you from your answer. All of the feedback that's been getting in the way. Just let that release right now. You might visually see energy moving through your body and down that grounding cord. You might visually see something that falls away, kind of a mental or emotional weight you've been carrying that drops off. Some level of self-doubt or confusion, whatever. Watch that fall away. Yeah. Good. And when you're ready, you can start to come on out of meditation. Can start to wiggle and stretch. Come back to the room. Nice. And one way that you can kind of take this practice and continue it, you can do that meditation. I highly recommend it. The center of the head and grounding cord. If you do that daily, I promise you'll start to see some development in your awareness, connection to intuition. But another way you can do it is if you have little hits of intuition during the day, just keep a little notepad or a section in your phone where you write those down and then come back to it from time to time to see, like, oh, what actually happened there? What was my gut feeling or my sense of intuition about this thing, this person, whatever? And how did it play out? And just give yourself a little validation for when those hits are accurate, when it's working for you. And the parts of it that are working for you will start to grow and develop, start to expand, right? So yeah, there we go. That's just a little tidbit. Developing your intuition, even though it's a natural ability, the world kind of undoes it. It kind of programs us out of connection to it. And so I have a full course on how to connect to your intuition that I'm teaching starting the end of September. And it's teaching more than that too. It's also teaching energy tools, kind of similar to what we just did. It's teaching how to meditate, how to release energy, how to heal. Because if you can work with energy and move things in that way, it's a lot safer and easier to open up to your intuitive abilities. And so we kind of start there and then pretty quickly move into being aware of energy, connecting with spirit guides, manifesting is a part of it too, all that good stuff. So I dropped the link to that course in the comments. It's also on my website, brandonjwilcox.com. If you or anyone you know wants to join, feel free to send them my way. It's a live 11-week class where we go in great depth to the most fundamental tools that I use every single day to connect to my intuition. Um, yeah, that's it for my segment. Are there any questions about the course or just about intuition in general before we jump into the group healing? Be happy to hear a couple questions if anyone has any, or if you want to share anything that came up in that meditation, that's fine too. Happy to hear that as well. No questions, huh? Y'all got it. All right. Did anyone receive some sort of answer, some sort of impression that came through? Were you able to kind of get into that space a little bit? Yeah. Few nods. Cool. Some thumbs up. Nice. Yeah. Of course, everything gets easier with practice. Practicing it in small increments over a course of time starts to build your ability to utilize that. So, good job taking a step with it. Yeah, if there's no questions, we can move on to the group healing, which I will kind of just maybe close my eyes and tune into your guys' energy, and I'll work with my healing guides to give you some healing. And I'll speak a little bit about what I'm doing. And there's a few of my students in the room on this call too. And so they will contribute to the healing energy as well. We can do it as a team. And yeah, they'll receive while they give as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and tune in that way. And if you're receiving, if you're just here, not as a student already of mine, but one who's just curious and hopping on, just close your eyes, relax. You can kind of get back in that meditative state. Or if you're listening to this via recording, same thing. You can actually enjoy this healing even remotely. It's outside of time and space. So just sit back and relax here, and I'll tune in. Mm. Yeah, and the first energy that I'm starting to work with And students in the room, you're more than welcome to unmute and share as well if there's anything you see that you want to add. But one of the first energies that I'm noticing is this energy that sits in people's solar plexus, this energy that compels people to do more, be more, have more. It's kind of this energy to go, go, go. And there's been some energy kind of around the collective that I'm noticing of where there's some pressure to go, go, go. But then some people's bodies are not seeing what direction to go, go, go in. And so it's kind of shutting down. It's like, oh, I don't know where to direct my energy. I don't know where to go. And so some of that energy is going into their doubts, going into their confusion or sort of how they feel about themselves, right? And so there's this kind of problem in the distribution of energy. And so I'm just going to have my healing guides come in and clear that up, shift that energy, because it's wanting to shift into a space of being able to pause and realign with your truth and be able to move forward in an effective and powerful way. It's kind of a marathon and not a sprint. And if you're sprinting in the wrong direction or sprinting into a tree, it's not really helpful. And that's kind of what some of that solar plexus energy was. So I'm going to go ahead and release that. There's a little bit of mental energy of like worry, need to kind of figure it all out. Going to hope to clear that energy out of there as well. Mhm. And some of you are just looking for permission to be able to be yourself, to just be your joyous, full, light self. And it kind of shows up a little differently in each of your space. I'm kind of looking at how that works out personally for each of you, but that's kind of the underlying core thing that's trying to happen. So for some of you, I'm clearing out that energy that would say you're not enough, that there's something more you need to be contributing or doing, that a certain area of your life needs to be fulfilled. And it's holding you in that energy of you being separate from that thing, that step that you think you need to take, and where that kind of pins you down. And so I'm going to clear that energy out, help you align with the future that you want to create, but more importantly, align with seeing yourself as already worthy, full, complete as you are, full permission to shine your most brilliant self. If you saw yourself as having a life that you're proud of, where your purpose is flowing through, your creativity is flowing through, you're joyous for how your life's working out, how would you show up in your body? How would you show up for yourself? How would you present? That's kind of what's coming through. It's like, oh, can I treat myself in that way and treat my life in that way? Letting go of that idea that if I treat my life that way preemptively, then I'm not going to get where I need to go. There's this idea that if you hold on to that pain or that separation from the thing, that'll encourage you to get there. But no, your life comes from you. And so as you embody that reality, that version of you that already has that complete, that's shining and radiating in your brilliance, you can validate all that you are as a soul here and now. Then you shine through and you create that in your life and your relationships and your careers and all those areas, your health. And so that's what my healing guides are kind of moving through the room to help shift. There's also a major energy of gotta do it alone that I see out there. Sort of this, yeah, just this energy that would imply that you have to do it all your own, that there's kind of this disconnect from community. It's kind of just a societal energy that's there, kind of separating and dividing. But the belief would then enable you from being able to receive the help that's always there for you. It creates more of that isolation instead of connection. Even if you're alone in a cabin in the woods far, far away, when we clear that energy out, you can still have connection to people in your own way. You can still have resources available to you, things that come in to help you. Yeah, and with that, I see kind of this energy of like, oh, and you can have fun with it too. Doesn't have to be so serious. You can be in enjoyment and still make progress. You don't have to see yourself or your life as this project that you have to fix. You can appreciate the wholeness, the perfection that's inherently there as an underlying spiritual quality of nothing else. And you're still allowed to make changes and progress, but it's not from a place of lack, of separation, division. Just like with this developing of your intuition, if you see it as something you don't have that you're trying to gain, it'll always be running away from you. Versus if you start to see it as something that you have within you and you can validate that even a little bit, it starts to grow. Same for your life. If you can validate the blissful nature of your being, your life becomes more blissful. If you can appreciate the abundant nature of your soul, your life starts to have more abundant. And so I'm just going to have my healing guides kind of connect everybody to their to their amusement, their enjoyment of life, kind of clearing any blocks to having a good time, figuring it out by having a good time. It's like if somebody's rafting down a river and they're like, we don't know how to raft, but they're just having fun getting tossed around the river bends and down these waterfalls, just laughing as they figure it out. They're going to learn it a lot quicker because they're in a place of ease than the group who's in fear and they're like, oh no, what if we die? We don't know what we're doing. They're going to be in a panic and all paddling in a different direction, you know? And so we're just going to shift that energy a little bit here. And then there's a little bit of a energy too of expect more of the same, kind of an energy that would keep us stuck in the monotony of it all or putting energy into familiar patterns. And if you expect the same, you're going to get more of the same. And so I'm going to clear that out and bring in this energy of expect a miracle. Be open to the greater dimensionality of your human experience. It's not so black and white. It's not all so physical. So let me clear out that energy that would say it is out of there. We'll take just a few more minutes. So any students, if you want to chime in, anything you're noticing, feel free. I'm noticing you all working the energy of actually your connection to your spiritual gifts, your ability to heal and your ability to create as a soul. This energy that would say you're like stuck and limited to what you could do physically. That's what's clearing out of there. You can always, your imagination is always bigger than the blockage you perceive. And so you can always imagine a new reality, create something new. And I see that kind of coming in as these healing guides in the room. Yeah, work through that the other side of that energy. I would say otherwise. In other words, connecting that spirit to body connection, connecting you to that inner divinity. Good. And I'm just going to start to wrap up by connecting everybody to their earthly nature, to their cosmic nature, and just replenishing your light, bringing back in your energy, unscattering it from wherever it may be, letting you have all your light in your body in this moment. The freedom to create freely in connection to your intuition, in connection to your abilities, and in connection to community. connection to support, connection to love and amusement. We can laugh our way to our dream life. That might be the necklace talking. I'm wearing a Happy Buddha necklace. He wanted to join for this event, and now I know why. The laughing Buddha's coming through. Yeah, good. And just give yourself one more deep breath in. And a nice deep sigh out, releasing whatever you're ready to release. And there we go. Good job. Hopefully you feel a little more connected to your intuition and a little less serious about your life. Yeah. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. Yeah, if you do have any questions that come to mind later, feel free to email me at brandon.psychic@gmail.com or shoot me a message on Instagram, Waken with Brandon, whatever. Happy to chat more. Yeah.